He sat at the grand piano as if he didn't belong there. That's what they wanted him to believe. The boy's small fingers hovered above the polished ivory keys, trembling, not from the coldness of the room, but from the weight of eyes staring at him. Some eyes were sharp as knives, slicing through his skin, whispering that he was out of place. Others were wide with curiosity, waiting to see if this child, this black maid's son, would dare to make a fool of himself on an instrument reserved for privilege and power. And in the corner of the hall, dressed in his midnight black suit, sat the billionaire, his mouth twisted, not in kindness but in mockery, a laugh escaping before the boy even pressed a single note. "Does the help's child think he can play?" he muttered loudly enough for the crowd to hear. A few chuckled along with him, their laughter echoing across marble floors. The boy swallowed hard. His mother, still in her uniform, stood by the doorway, clutching her hands so tightly her knuckles turned white. She had worked in that mansion for 15 years, scrubbing, serving, bowing her head in silence. Every dollar she made went toward keeping food on the table, clothes on her boy's back, and, most importantly, those piano lessons she could barely afford. She believed in something bigger than herself, and now here he was, under the glaring chandelier, his heart beating like a war drum. "Don't let them see you break," he whispered to himself. "Don't give them the satisfaction." He pressed the first key. It rang out, soft but clear, like the beginning of a storm. The crowd shifted. A few eyes narrowed, others rolled. The billionaire laughed again, louder this time, but the boy didn't. "Stop!" His fingers, once hesitant, began to move, slowly, then faster. He played not just notes, but memories. His mother humming lullabies while ironing clothes, the sound of church choirs rising through wooden walls, the rhythm of footsteps on city pavement where dreams felt too far away to reach. Each sound carried pain. Each sound carried hope. The billionaire leaned back, unimpressed, his arrogance thick as the cigar smoke he exhaled earlier that night. To him, this was entertainment, a spectacle, a servant's child trying to impersonate greatness. But as the Idawi melody unfolded, something happened in the room. The laughter died. The whispers softened, because the boy wasn't just playing a piano. He was playing his soul. His small body swayed with the music. His eyes closed as if the world outside no longer existed. The chords rose like a prayer, pleading, aching, demanding to be heard. He thought of every insult, every time he was told he was less. He thought of his mother's weary smile, the way she held back tears when the billionaire mocked her accent, her clothes, her very existence. "This is for you, Mama." The notes thundered now, filling every corner of the hall. It was no longer a recital. It was testimony. It was history. It was every ancestor who was silenced finding a voice through his small hands, and the audience felt it, even those who didn't want to. The billionaire's smirk began to fade. The music slowed, then built again, fierce as a storm rising from the ocean. People shifted in their seats, suddenly unsure of themselves. This wasn't the amateur fumbling they expected. This was mastery, raw, unpolished, yet undeniably powerful. The boy could hear his own thoughts fighting through the rhythm. "They see me as nothing. But listen, just listen. You cannot erase what I carry inside." Tears welled in his mother's eyes. She covered her mouth, afraid that a single sob would break the fragile silence surrounding her son's performance. She had scrubbed these floors for years, yet in this moment, it was her child who owned the room. Every note cut through centuries of silence. Every chord rewrote the narrative forced upon him. By the time he reached the climax, the hall no longer looked the same. The crystal chandeliers sparkled brighter, as if reflecting his defiance. The marble pillars stood taller, like guardians bearing witness to history being made. And then, suddenly, it was over. The boy's hands froze above the keys. His chest heaved. His eyes opened. Silence. For a moment, He feared the billionaires. Laughter would return, louder than ever. That the crowd would clap politely out of pity, then move on as if nothing happened. But then, one person rose to their feet, then another and another, until the entire hall was standing. The applause thundered, shaking the very walls that once confined him. People cheered, some with tears streaming down their faces. They weren't clapping for a poor maid's son. They were clapping for a truth too undeniable to ignore. And the billionaire? He sat there stiff, his laughter silenced, his arrogance shattered. He had mocked the boy before he played a single note, but now the entire room stood against him, not with words, but with applause. The maid's son bowed his head, not in submission, but in triumph. For the first time, he wasn't invisible. He was undeniable. The crowd's ovation roared in his ears, but inside, he was still that trembling boy sitting before the piano for the first time. He remembered the cracked wooden bench at the church, the borrowed keyboard with missing keys, the nights his mother skipped meals so he could practice a little longer. And he remembered the voices, always the voices. You'll never be good enough. Music doesn't belong to people like you. Know your place. But tonight, his music drowned them. All out, he turned his head just enough to see his mother. She wasn't clapping. She wasn't moving. She was frozen, hands pressed to her lips, tears streaming down her cheeks. For 15 years, she had been invisible in this mansion, just another uniform, another pair of hands to serve, another nameless figure in the background. But tonight, because of him, she was seen. The billionaire shifted in his chair, suddenly restless. His power came from control. Control of the room, control of people, control of the story. But he had lost it. The boy had taken it without asking, with nothing but music. For the first time in years, the mother lifted her chin. She stood taller. The humiliation she endured in silence no longer defined her. She looked at her son and saw not a boy, but a bridge between past suffering and future possibility. The applause continued, long, unrelenting. Some clapped for beauty, others for defiance. Many because they knew deep down they had witnessed something larger than music. They had witnessed resistance turned into art. The boy closed his eyes again, not out of fear, but out of gratitude. This is not just mine, he thought. This belongs to every child told they don't belong, every mother who carries the weight of two worlds, every voice that was silenced, but refused to die. When the ovation finally slowed, the billionaire rose to his feet, not to clap, but to leave. His face was pale, his pride wounded. The hall noticed, whispers following him out. The boy watched him go, and for the first time, he didn't feel small. He didn't feel ashamed. He felt powerful, because dignity cannot be given. It must be claimed. And tonight, he claimed it. Years later, people would still talk about that night. They would say a boy once silenced a room of power with nothing but music. Some would call it talent. Others would call it destiny. But those who truly understood knew it was something deeper. It was truth, unshaken and unstoppable. And in every corner of the world where someone feels invisible, where someone is mocked for daring to dream, his story will echo. Play anyway. Speak anyway. Rise anyway. Because no laugh, no insult, no wall of privilege can stop a spirit determined to be heard. So if you're listening now, let this story remind you. Dignity is not a gift handed down by the powerful. It is already yours. Your worth is not defined by laughter, by doubt, or by the cruelty of those who cannot see your light. It is defined by the courage to keep playing, to keep speaking, to keep rising. That boy at the piano, he wasn't just playing for himself. He was playing for all of us. And if his music touched you, if his story made you feel something, then don't let it end here. Subscribe, share it, leave a comment. Let the world know that you too stood up in that hall. Because when we stand together, no laugh can break us.